I grew up in a really small house at the edge of our neighborhood, where darkness ran the show once the sun went down. During the day, it didn't feel very isolated. Kids rode their bikes past our place, cars cut through their own way out of town, and everything felt nice and ordinary. At night, though, it got dark. Our porch light would barely even reach the yard, and beyond that was just black space and woodland. And that really never bothered me. I wasn't scared of the dark or animals or noises outside. The house was solid, safe. My parents were attentive inside this quiet, consistent way. They were involved in everything I did, encouraged me to try new things, and loved me throughout all of it. I trusted them completely, and because of that, I trusted the house. They wouldn't let anything bad happen to me, especially here. On weekends, they'd let me sleep in the living room. It was treated like this small reward, something special. I'd lay out a blanket on the floor, grab a pillow from my bed, and camp out in front of the TV. I'd watch whatever movies I could get my hands on, sometimes horror, sometimes funny girl movies. I ate popcorn straight from a mixing bowl, tried to stay awake as long as I possibly could. Most of the nights it was mission accomplished. I'd wake up late, covered in popcorn butter, TV still running. And that night in particular, it wasn't any different. I had the TV on, the living room was dark except for the screen, and I remember finishing my popcorn, setting the bowl off to the side, telling myself I'll stay awake a little longer. I don't remember drifting off, I just remember opening up my eyes again. The TV was still on, but the sound felt far away. It wasn't fear, it was just a sense that I was no longer alone, like the room had just been in motion before I woke up. My eyes started moving toward the front window without giving it any other thought. At first, I saw nothing, just the reflection of the TV and the curtains pulled most of the way close. And then, a shadow crossed the glass. I stayed still watching. The porch light wasn't on, so my eyes adjusted. I could barely make out the shape of a man moving across the porch. He was tall with a bald head. He wasn't trying to be quiet either. He dragged one of the chairs across the boards and then moved it to the small table. He moved quickly, rearranging everything on the porch. I didn't sit up, I didn't reach for anything. I just watched him shift the furniture around, lining up the chairs, then moving them again. The TV painted the wall and the glass all kinds of colors, which made it even creepier. When he finished, he stepped right up to the window. I felt my body go heavy, pretending to still be asleep without really thinking about it. Armor for most children, you know? He leaned forward, pressed his forehead into the glass, and peered through that narrow gap in the curtains. He was watching TV. I closed my eyes most of the way and slowed my breathing, leaving just enough space for me to see. The light from the screen lit his face up in these flashes, and his expression never changed. After a moment, his eyes would shift, and he looked right at me. It wasn't sudden. He glanced over, looked away, then looked back again. His eyes moved over me, taking in my face, my body on the floor, the blanket. There's no reaction to his face, which was haunting to my child mind. Was he expecting me to be there? I don't know, but I didn't move. Eventually, he turned back to the TV, and my thoughts started to catch up then. I wondered where he'd come from. Our house is not close to anything. There were woods behind us and scattered houses before town would pick up again. I pictured him walking through the trees and noticing the light from the window, following it like a moth to a flame. I didn't know how long he'd stayed there, but my legs fell asleep and so did my arms. I peeked an eye open and saw that he was gone. I waited for the shadow to come back, but instead, I heard footsteps moving across the porch. I waited a few more seconds after the footsteps started. They ended up moving toward the edge of my house. Hearing those familiar boards creak in the same ways they did when myself or my parents walked across them, it was nauseating. And that finally kicked me into action. I got up, ran down the hallway to my parents' room. I didn't bother knocking, just opened the door and whispered my dad's name. He was already awake, standing near the window with the curtains pulled back an inch. "What's going on?" I asked him. He didn't look at me right away. "I heard something outside," he said. "I thought it was you." So I told him about the man on the porch, that I'd seen him through the living room window. My dad nodded at me. He said he'd woken up a few minutes earlier when he heard those footsteps and had been waiting to see who it was. And that's when he saw the same man moving around out there. My dad picked up the phone and called 911. He kept his voice calm, gave our address, explained that there was somebody on the porch that he did not recognize. Then he opened the closet and took out a baseball bat. I remember thinking how strange it was to see him holding it like that, barefoot in his pajamas. He told me to stay in the hall and then went to the front door. I watched him from the corner as he opened it up and stepped onto the porch. He raised his voice, firmly speaking, telling the man that the police were on their way and that he needed to stay right where he was. And for a moment, nothing happened. The man stepped out from the darker side of the house like he'd been hiding. He didn't argue, he didn't speak. He walked over and sat down on the porch steps, hands in his lap, staring straight ahead. The strangest thing I've ever seen. The police would show up a few minutes later, ask him some questions, and ask my dad some more questions, then walk the man to their car. They told us they were taking him in for some kind of welfare check. He hadn't broken in or anything and done really anything wrong. He didn't even try to get inside. Technically, he wasn't in trouble. After they left, my dad fixed the furniture on the porch and checked the darker corners of the property, and he said everything looked normal, looked fine. I never saw that man again. Never heard anything about who he was or where he even came from. We didn't move, but I stopped sleeping in the living room after that. Even now, I think about how calmly he just sat on those steps, how comfortable he seemed to be waiting for the police. I still walk down that stoop every day, and it gives me chills to think about the guy and how relaxed he was, sitting right there, right where I was now, like he hadn't done anything wrong at all.